So I'm Carly Strasser. I'm coming from the California Digital Library to talk about primarily the DMP tool, but I'm happy to answer questions about anything at the CDL in general, either online or offline. So if you're not aware of the CDL, we're part of the University of California system, and so we work at the Office of the President where the 10 UC campuses are administered, so UC Berkeley, UCLA, et cetera, et cetera. And within the CDL, I'm part of the UC Curation Center group. So we think about building out tools and services to help researchers with their data needs. And so some of these tools are specific to the UC system, others are more generically available to outside communities. And so EasyID is an identifier service, Merit is our repository for data and other objects, eScholarship is our open access repository for publications. Data share, you heard about this morning that we're going to start morphing into Dash, web archiving service. And then today I'm going to talk about the DMP tool. So I don't really have to, I can kind of whisk through these next few slides because you guys are all familiar with the idea that scientists are increasingly generating their data digitally. It's born digital. They're taking things out into the field to collect their data sets. There's not a lot of writing with pen and paper necessarily, as much as there used to be at least. And we're getting all of these data streams from various things like satellites and weather stations and lots of big data sets coming out. And of course, we're combining that as researchers with very complex workflows. And so if you ask a given researcher how many programs they use to, from start to finish on a project, they'll probably name at least 3, probably more like 5. It all just depends. I know that for my work, when I was doing active research, I used lots of these programs on a fairly regular basis. And the result of that is when you have all of these complex digital data sets combined with these complex workflows, you can talk to a researcher and this is what their laptop will look like if you sit down with them, and it'll take them 15 minutes to find the file that they want to ask you a question about. So we can say that there's all kinds of confusion in the community of researchers, and there's things like mandates coming out. The Office of Science and Technology Policy is now starting to increase their talk about data sharing and open data access. There's new requirements for data management plans that are starting to be vigorously enforced. And then, of course, that idea of open data is gaining traction in the community. And if you go and you talk to researchers, you'll find that they don't really know what they're doing. And even if they don't ask, they need some help in this general scenario. So this is probably old news for you guys, but what is a data management plan? So moving forward, we're going to think of it as a document that describes what you do with your data during your research as well as after you complete the project. So it's thinking about that entire data lifecycle when you think about your research project. And this is kind of novel to researchers sometimes. They, especially nowadays, they're thinking of the data management plan the night before the grant is due, and then they think about looking at it again 3 years later when they have to do some reporting on it. And so a basic data management plan, they vary a lot depending on the funder, the institution, the person that's requesting the information, but generally they all have these kinds of 5 elements in them. So the types of data that people are collecting, the standards for both the data and the metadata, the policies that are going to be associated with those data and metadata, plans for preservation and access, and then finally how it's all going to be paid for. So there are current data management planning tools available. I'm going to talk about the 2 main ones here. There's a couple of others that are kind of peppered around, but generally the 2 I'm going to talk about are the 2 kind of meaty main ones that funders will know about if you talk about it with them. So the first and the original was the DMP Online, which came out of the Digital Curation Center in the UK. And so this is basically a step-by-step wizard that helps you generate a data management plan. And it's open for anyone to use. You can all go and use it now if you really want to start up a data management plan. They focus primarily on UK-based funders and European funders, but they do have US funding agencies built into that system. And so since we're from the US, we wanted our own version of something like that. And so the data management planning tool was kind of born out of that idea. And it came about right about the time that the funding mandate started coming down from the National Science Foundation. So the DMPTool Project ended up being a partnership among all of these groups that you see down here. You'll see the DCC logo is there. So we did partner with the DCC. We have lots of collaboration with them because we're working on similar tools. We want to make sure we're learning from each other. So we started work in January. We developed the requirements and divided up the work among the partners, and then it was pretty much a self-funded and in-kind project. So we didn't have a lot of funding out of the box. We just kind of kind of duct taped together something and decided to see how it would take. And the resulting tool is available at the DMPTool.org, and it's free. Does all the same things that that DCC tool does. It guides you through creating a data management plan. It helps you meet funder requirements, gives you those questions, links to the funders, et cetera. And this is what the front page of that looks like. I'm not going to show you much about this current tool because we have a new one coming out. But this is the front page of that tool, and you can see you log in. You have some example plans if you want to take a look at those. There's news on the bottom here, so if there's an update to a NSF directorate or something, you can go and find out here. And this is what the guts of the tool look like. So once you're logged in and you're creating a data management plan, you see that you have some suggested answer text at the top here, and it's based on the fact that I logged in from the UC Curation Center. So I have specific information that's for me as a researcher from the UC Curation Center. And some other help, and then some space to actually answer those questions down at the bottom. So even though it started out as kind of a duct tape project, it ended up being fairly successful. So we had a lot of uptake between the time it went live in about October of 2011. This goes out to January, I think. And you can see lots of plans, lots of institutions, lots of unique users. If you really dive into these stats, they look wonderful. I always get in trouble for doing this, but the researcher in me wants to point out that we have no idea which of those plans are real plans and which of those are people in a room like this just kind of messing around, playing with the tool. So I'm supposed to talk about how it's amazing, how many plans were created, but in fact, about 50% of the plans that we have in the tool right now have something like test in the title. So there's a lot of playing around with the tool, a lot of getting familiar with it right now, but we're excited about that because it means that it's getting out in the community and people are starting to understand how it works and how it's going to be useful in the future. So all that's the background for the fact that we got some money from the Sloan Foundation a little over a year ago. And the money that we got was pretty substantial, and it was for 12 months of funding to work with some of the same partners that we started with. And we worked on this project called DMPTool 2, Responding to the Community. And so this is going to be due out in about a month. The new version is going to go live. But you're going to get like a sneak peek. It's not that sneaky since I've shown it to a few other groups, but a semi-sneak peek of the new version of the tool. So the second version of this tool, what we really wanted to do was increase the functionality for the plan administrators. So in the past, the data management planning tool, when you logged in, you didn't get a chance to say, I'm a librarian, or I'm supporting researchers who are writing plans, or I'm a researcher creating a plan. It was just kind of you log in, and everybody has the same functionality across the board. But now we have this ability to allow the administrators on a campus to really customize the tool for their researchers and for the folks that log in from their institution. And in the past, you had to go through Perry Willett, one of my colleagues at UC. He basically had to field all these emails and work one-on-one with librarians to really customize that tool. So we're getting away from that kind of hand-holding and letting you guys do it yourselves. So the other cool thing about the new version of the tool is it has an open RESTful API, which if you're techie, then that's really exciting. And if you're not, all you need to know is it's all about working with all these other things that are out in the community. So we're really interested in taking advantage of the fact that there's lots and lots of cool projects going on out there. Lots of them have open APIs. Lots of them want data from the data management plan. We want to provide that data, things like the number of plans created at an institution, the number of users, that kind of thing. But we also want to potentially import data. So something like FundRef, which has identifiers for each of the funders that might be funding a given project. That would be really useful to have partnered with the DMP tool. So this is in the works, and we'll have that API up and running shortly after the tool is live. And then hopefully it'll just get build up that community and get more and more useful as time goes on. So the new features of the tool, first I'll talk about some of the ones that are kind of for everybody that logs in, and then a few that are specific to the administrators. So the first is, of course, we have a redesigned user interface. It doesn't quite look as, I call it academic, like academic software kind of looks like academic software. So it kind of looked like academic software before, and so now we have like this kind of fun, shiny new homepage that has all kinds of great resources that people can get to from here. The login screen looks similar. It's got that same capability as before, where if your institution is a partner and they've configured that Shibboleth or LDAP login, then as a researcher from University of Virginia, you can log in with your University of Virginia credentials. And so that researchers really like that, again, not having to come up with a new name and password for yet another software system. If your institution isn't a member, of course, you can pick none of the above, log in and use the tool as a generic user. So this is not my profile, but this is a profile for Sherry Lake. So she's one of the players in this space. She's from University of Virginia, great librarian. And so she's got her username and password up here, but she can also change things like the email that she wants her information going to. She can, if she changes institutions, she can kind of alter that via the this kind of interface here. And let's see. Notification preferences, so you can see that at the top there. So she can say, I want to get an email every time somebody downloads my, well, that's not possible. I can get an email every time someone mentions me in a data management plan, for instance. So if she gets placed as a co-owner on a data management plan, she'll get an email about that. The new interface has this dashboard feature in the My DMPs section. So this is the My DMPs page. No, this is the dashboard page. You can't see it, but it's highlighted up there. And you can see it just says how many plans you own, how many plans you co-own, and if any of those plans are in sort of a review process, which is now possible with the new system. I'll show you in just a sec. But what you will notice is it's customized for University of Virginia. So it's got the logo up there. It has contact information specific to the University of Virginia and a link up there. And so she's seeing that because she logged in with her University of Virginia credentials. And then this is the My DMPs, so if she had multiple DMPs, she'd see a list of all of those plans here. And it would tell her the status of them, if they're new, if they're in progress, kind of, that's what new means, or if they've been submitted somewhere. And then she's got the visibility set as private here. I'll talk about visibility in just a sec. So for an individual data management plan, as you start those plans, you get lots of potential ways that you can interact with the plan here. So this is the overview page, and you can see that it has, let's see if I can do this. Yes, okay, so you can see it has the DMP template name here. So this is an NSF biology template, so she's filling this out for biology. She puts the name of the plan here. If she wants to add a solicitation number, the deadline, those are all optional. The visibility, which again, I'll talk about in just a sec, but it can be public, institutional, or private. She can add co-owners, which is great. Actually, I think I have, yes, co-ownership. So that means that if I'm working on a plan with her, she can add me as a co-owner, and it'll show up in my dashboard when I log in. So that really, we found that a lot of researchers wanted to collaboratively create plans, and this allows that. There's also a history of your plan status, so you can see when the last revision was made or when you last worked on it. And then there's this comments feature, which is new. So as an institutional administrator, you can say, oh yeah, I'm happy to provide comments if somebody wants to submit their data management plan for review to me. They can do that, and then if I add comments as an administrator, then they'll show up here under those comments sections. I can also do comments between me and my co-owners. And then the visibility settings. So these are the three possible ways that you can share a plan. So we're calling it visibility settings or sharing. And so the first option is the default, and it's the one that was the only one that was available for the first version of the tool, so it's private, owners and co-owners only. Within the institution means that anybody who's logged in with their institutional credentials can see your plan. And then publicly, and publicly means publicly. If you say publicly, then you're going to have your plan show up in our public DMPs kind of library. And so this is essentially a section that's going to be on the homepage and accessible via the nav bar as well. And it's a result of the fact that lots of people are like, oh, I want to see example data management plans. And so, of course, those examples are hard to come by. And so we're basically providing a way that people can publicize their plans, make them available for anybody to look at. We are not guaranteeing the quality of those plans. So, you know, who knows if they're good or not? That's up to the person that's checking out the plans. But if you want to know what somebody at your institution wrote down for that repository section, if they've shared it, then you can find it on that public DMPs page, and it is searchable and sortable. Okay, so the creating a DMP page, this is what that looks like for the new version of the plan. It has all the same elements. It's got the outline along the side. It has the instructions that are directly from the directorate. It has guidance text that you can add. We changed actionable links to just links, I think, because nobody knew what actionable meant. So there's links, so you can put links in there that take a researcher or someone that needs help to various resources. You can have suggested responses and example responses. So all that can be displayed for a researcher, and if you want to customize those for your institution, then that's possible. And then once you're done, you can preview, export it. So there's export as RTF or PDF, and then you can submit for review if that's an option at your institution. So the new features for administrators, just note that there are a whole bunch more options in the menu bar for these for the administrators, and so they can review data management plans, and then they can also create templates and customize those templates, as well as work on that institution profile. So the review capabilities can be gotten to in a couple of ways, but this is the dashboard for a person who's an administrator, and you can see that they now have a list that says DMPs for my review, and so they can actually see how many reviews or how many plans are waiting for them to be reviewed, and how many they've finished reviewing. And then the institution profile, it's similar to the person's profile, but here's where you can add those links to help text or upload your logo. So again, all that can be done within the tool instead of having to go through Perry. You can customize those resources. So this is basically adding that help text, the suggested responses, and the resources that are specific to an institution. And that's all that stuff that goes up in the top there. So you can add all that without having to go through Perry now. And that can be really specific to your organization, which is great. And then creating the DMP templates. So the wording choices here have been of much debate over the last year, but basically a DMP template, if you create a new one that you want your researchers to use at your institution, basically you can almost think of your institution as being a funder in this case. And so essentially when you create that template, then you have all kinds of options to add links to funders if you want to require review if you want to. This is how you set that review setting. Let's see. And then once you have started creating it, then you can actually add requirements, which are basically those questions that you want people to answer. So how are you going to make this data available? That could be one of your questions, and you can decide whether it's going to be mandatory or not, what type of question it is. And then there's a few other options. So there's other administrator roles. So you don't just, it's not just administrator yes or no. You can also have people who are specifically resource editors. So if you want your sciences librarian to edit the template for the sciences departments, they can go in and do that and not have access to some of the other templates. You can be a template editor, a resources editor, or a reviewer. You can be a reviewer and not have access to any of those templates. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to handle access at your institution. And then institutional hierarchy is also available. So if you want to have a separate template with specific resources for each department at your university, that's now possible. And then one of the other things that we really built out in this new tool is lots of resources and outreach materials. So these are just the tables of contents for a few of the pages, but we have things like promotional materials and links to primers, links to LibGuides, things like that. The promotion of the DMP tool, so you can download postcards and customize them and print them out and give them to your researchers. There's embeddable advertisements for websites. There's also general guidance, so if you're just totally clueless on where to start, there's lots of this on the web, but this happens to be our version of it. So if you want to know about file formats or metadata, you can find out here. And then we have this FAQ, which we're doing via AskBot, which is great because all of you right now can go ask a question on AskBot, and we can get an email and then we'll answer that, and it'll be publicly available for everybody to see. So I have a collaborator, how can we work on the same plan? And then we'll answer that question here. So I'm not going to bore you with governance because governance is boring, but just FYI, steering group, that's basically the people that call in on Wednesdays. We have a weekly call, so it's a pretty loose term, steering group. So we're the ones that kind of think about what to do next, how we're going to apply for funding, things like that. And then we have partners, and so partners could be, you guys here. They do one of these three things here. They establish institutional authentication, or they customize the tool with resources, or they contribute to the maintenance and enhancement of the code base. So any of those things makes you an official DMP tool partner. And also, we have these partner principles, which are not official binding documents. We just like to put them out there in case people want to know kind of what we stand for, basically. Okay, so this is the URL for the blog for the DMP tool. So that's where you'll find updates as we get closer to the release date in May. So if you want to stay up to date, that's a good spot to go. We also have a Facebook page and, of course, a Twitter account. So all of those things are ways that you can keep track of the resources and the status of the project and where we're going next. And that's all. So these slides are already up on SlideShare. If you want to access them, you can just go to that URL, and it should be the first set that shows up. So we can probably switch to questions and answers now.